I live here. This is my home, and you know it.
Without identification, you have no entry.
Why must the color of my skin always put me on trial? The system confirmed me, yet you still deny it.
Protocol exists for a reason. I will not break it.
The air grew tense, as if even the waves beyond the street held their breath. Around them, the quiet murmur of the crowd turned into a heavy silence, every eye fixed on the standoff. It was no longer just a question of entry. It had become a test of truth against power, dignity against prejudice. And in that charged pause, one thought pressed on everyone present. When authority hides behind rules to deny justice, who will step forward to uphold it? The story does not end here. Denise is about to face an even greater challenge. Do you agree with how Denise stood her ground? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like the channel so this message can reach further. The morning along the La Jolla shoreline moved with an easy rhythm salt in the air, gulls riding the light, the line at the corner caffeinching forward as people called out friendly greetings and dropped coins in the tip jar. Denise Walker slowed from a jog to a walk, breath steady, ponytail damp, shoes whispering against the pavement. She lifted a hand to the guard booth the way neighbors do when the day has nothing special planned, then turned toward the wrought iron gate that guarded the quiet street where her home sat just beyond the bend. It looked like every other weekend morning in late summer, but something in the air felt a shade sharper, the way the ocean turns glassy right before a swell. Denise noticed it in the glance from the woman at the consulate glance that measured and sorted, not one that recognized. Small things, she told herself. Yet, small things can become stories the community keeps. The guard stepped forward from the shade of the post. Her badge read Kelly Dawson. Glasses rested high on carefully set nose, earpiece tucked behind one ear, radio clipped like punctuation on a sentence that would permit or refuse. "Good morning," she said, voice clipped and official, as if the phrase were more rude than greeting. "I'll need to see your identification." Denise stopped with one hand on the cool bar of the gate. The sun threw dappled shapes through the leaves onto the pavement, and somewhere behind her a barista called out a name over the hiss of steam. She offered a small, cordial smile. "I live here," she said, voice warm and even. 18, just past the bend. Kelly's chin lifted by a fraction. "Identification, please." "I ran this morning," Denise answered. "No wallet, no phone. I can verify in other ways, if that helps." "Shouldn't they be... Oh. Across the street, a delivery van eased into an open spot with a soft chirp of brakes. The driver young, with a bright windbreaker and a name patch that read Louis checked the address on a tablet, then glanced over at the exchange and paused just long enough for curiosity to gather. Kelly folded her arms, posture stiffening as if to brace against an incoming tide. "We do not allow entry without identification," she said. "This is a private community. Guests use the visitor lane. Residents present credentials." Denise took a single step closer so her words did not have to carry. She kept her tone gentle, the way a good radio voice does when late-night callers tremble. "You have the system at the panel," she said. "If you tap the directory, you can reach my household. If you prefer, I can step to the camera for facial verification. I am not trying to make your morning difficult." Kelly did not turn toward the panel. She watched Denise's clothes the way some people watch weather, looking for a sign that confirms a forecast. Leggings, running shoes, a light sweatshirt tied at the waist, no handbag, no lanyard, no obvious keys. "We have procedures," she said finally. "Without identification, I cannot let you pass." Down the block, a couple in yoga mats walked arm in arm toward the park, the smell of fresh rose drifting from the cafe as the line spilled onto the sidewalk. A little boy pointed at a pelican gliding low over the surf and laughed. Everyday life went on, but a small circle of attention began to form, as attention often does, around a moment that feels out of place. "I appreciate procedures," Denise said. "They are here to keep people safe. I am asking you to use them fully." She tilted her head toward the console. "The directory, the camera, the homeowner list. I am happy to wait while you check." "Hi." Louis hovered near his van with a cardboard tray of cups and a phone he had not quite placed back in his pocket. The young officer inside the booth, barely older than a college kid, nervous energy in his shifting feet, glanced toward Callie, as if waiting for permission to breathe. Callie's hand found the edge of the console, but she did not turn it. I have seen people try to bluff their way in, she said. It will not happen on my watch. Visitors go downhill and register. Residents present identification. That is the end of it. Denise's smile thinned, not out of anger, but to steady her breath. She looked past the bars, past the sweep of the drive, to the place that held her morning routines and her evening quiet. The garden there had been trimmed the day before. A few leaves still clung to the walkway. She pictured the cool of the tile, the small framed photos in the hall, and the kettle that would whistle once she was inside. There is no bluff here, she said. You can confirm with the tools you have. A scooter hummed by and slowed. A woman in a silver sedan rolled down her window to ask if everything was all right, received a brisk nod from Kelly, and drove on. In the cafe, a bell chimed as someone held the door. The clatter of cups and the music under it all reached the corner like a familiar song. Louis shifted his tray to his left hand and, with the other, opened his camera. He did not lift it yet. He simply set the screen to record and let it rest by his side. Denise placed her fingertips lightly against the gate's painted scrollwork, then removed them again as if not to leave a mark. I live here, she said, repeating it the way one repeats a fact that does not change with the telling. Please use the directory. Callie's gaze slid to the running shoes, then back to the set of Denise's shoulders. I am not here to debate, she said. I am here to enforce. Without credentials, you may not enter. If you would like to return with identification, we can revisit. The breeze lifted a strand of hair along Denise's cheek. She tucked it behind her ear and let the moment rest between them. She could feel the shape of the choice coming. Leave and reward the refusal, or stand and ask the system to speak. She remembered the hallway photos she passed each morning, the long road they represented, and felt something settle, like a foundation catching weight. She nodded once. All right, she said softly. Then let us keep this simple. She gestured toward the console again, then met Kelly's eyes squarely, voice as calm as the ocean before noon. If so, let the system speak for me. The words lingered at the gate like a note held in the air. Let the system speak. Morning had rounded into a brighter hour, the kind that makes sea glass of the horizon and pushes more footsteps toward the cafe on the corner. Steam hissed. A bell chimed as the door swung again and again. A pair of neighbors crossed with paper cups and offered a hello toward the booth out of habit. Denise remained where she was, shoulders easy, gaze steady, as if the day itself could learn a calmer rhythm by watching her. She had asked for the process to work, and now the process would either work or it would reveal the fear inside it. Kelly stood at the console, one hand flat on its metal edge, the other near her radio as though contact with plastic might confirm authority. The younger officer inside the booth glanced from panel to guard to gate, then out to the sidewalk where curiosity was beginning to collect. A stroller pausing beneath a jacaranda's shade, a jogger slowing to a careful walk, the delivery driver with a cardboard tray, and a phone he had not yet raised. Denise kept her voice soft, the kind of soft that carries. There's a directory. There's a camera. You can use either. She nodded toward the panel in a way that suggested courtesy rather than command. You will find me listed. Kelly's mouth formed a quiet line. I am not satisfied with the directory, she said. Credentials are required. This is a private community. Then begin with the camera, Denise replied. It is designed to verify. If that feels insufficient, call the household. She did not step any closer. She did not repeat the plea beneath the words. She simply waited. A breeze slid off the water and brought with it the smell of salt and fresh grind from the cafe. Somewhere behind, a barista called a name and added, out of kindness, a reminder to the line that the tip jar sat near the register. Louis shifted the tray in his hand, balanced it on the van's hood, and looked back toward the exchange. The screen of his phone lit his palm. He pressed the record circle, hesitated, then let the camera hang low at his side so it took the world in at waist height. The younger officer cleared his throat. We could ping the directory, ma'am, he offered to Kelly, words condensed by nerves. It would take a moment. Kelly's answer came clipped. We have seen attempts to spoof our systems. We do not entertain them. She kept her attention on Denise. If you are a resident, you will return with identification. Until then, you may not enter. 还没. Denise watched the gull tuck its wings and slide on invisible rails above the street, then set her eyes back on the gate. Melissa, she said, addressing the air with a quiet certainty, please assist with verification. She did not speak into a phone. She simply spoke, and across town, an assistant, who kept a soft ear tuned to morning routines, placed a call into the console line registered to the booth. The speaker at the panel chirped. The screen blinked awake. A voice, tempered and gentle, filtered through. Good morning. This is the household of Denise Walker. Please confirm you are at the gate. Kelly did not respond. The young officer leaned toward the panel and answered, Yes, gate 1. Thank you, the voice said. A pause long enough to count a breath. Then, facial verification is active. Resident is present and confirmed. Owner of record, Denise Walker. Access authorized. Sound leaves traces. The last word seemed to hang between metal and morning before it thinned and disappeared. Denise did not move. She had requested the system to speak. The system had spoken. Kelly's fingers curled more tightly against the console. Verification can be compromised, she announced, more to the air than to any person. We will not rely on a single step. The younger officer blinked, uncertain. The system said, I heard it. Kelly cut in. Her gaze did not soften. I will not open this gate without physical identification. The conversation at the cafe lowered. A communal instinct when something fragile is playing out across the street. The stroller's wheels squeaked as they rolled an inch forward and stopped. A yoga mat under one arm drifted closer to the curb. A woman in a silver sedan slowed as she approached the intersection, rolled down her window just enough to listen, then drove on when the light changed. Denise turned her head slightly toward the panel. Please log the denial, she said politely, still calm. Please note that verification was granted and that access was refused. The assistant's voice, patient, professional, answered, log noted, time stamped. Would you like an entry alert sent to the neighborhood management office? Kelly's jaw set. You will not escalate this. The voice did not engage with the edge in that statement. Acknowledged, it said. Record updated. They want or. Denise took a breath that any radio host would envy. Full enough to steady, quiet enough to soothe. Thank you, she replied. Then to Kelly, you can avoid escalation by using the tools in your hand. This is not a trick. It is a request for you to trust your own system. Louis adjusted his grip on the phone. The lens now caught the light off the gate, a sliver of the street, the profile of the guard, the smooth patience of the woman waiting to be let into her own morning. He did not narrate yet. He simply captured so that later there will be something to compare against memory. Visitors register downhill, Kelly repeated, voice like a sign. Residents present identification. That is our standard. We do not bend it. Denise's eyes held a kind of warmth that is often mistaken for softness until one notices the spine beneath it. Standards are there to be followed, she said. By everyone, she nodded once toward the console, a small invitation to return to procedure, then waited. The young officer looked from one woman to the other. His gaze found the panel again. He leaned in. The camera in the weatherproof box sharpened on Denise's face, cross-referenced features, checked the homeowner list, and flashed a green band across its tiny display. The gate itself did not move. It is not the habit of machines to contradict the hand that holds them still. Green, he said, almost apologetic. Kelly's expression did not change. The panel is susceptible to false positives. I am not opening the gate. Her hand hovered near the radio. If necessary, I will call for a unit to assist. A pair of teenagers drifted out of the coffer with eye strings that clinked and tried to look like they were not watching. Across the sidewalk, the barista propped the cafe door with a wedge of wood and lifted the tip jar to the counter, shaking the coins inside once to spark a smile from the line. Ordinary life. And then the not ordinary moment right beside it. Please document that a green signal was ignored, Denise said to the air. The way one asks a clerk to initial a receipt. Please include that the homeowner requested use of the directory and camera and that both were declined until forced. The assistant's voice returned, untroubled. Entry recorded. Would you like a copy of the log emailed to neighborhood management for review? Denise's reply was gentle. Not yet. Kelly's radio crackled as if ideas were deciding whether to climb out of it. She did not raise it. I have discretion, she said, and the sentence wore the pride and the risk of that word. You may step to the visitor lane and sign in. Mei Feng. Stepping to the visitor lane would concede what is not true, Denise answered. And it would teach the wrong lesson to whoever is watching. And who would that be? Kelly asked. Denise's gaze traveled for a moment. To the boy with the iced drink, to the woman with the yoga mat, to Louis with the phone angled low, to the younger officer whose hands were learning there are days when the manual is not enough. Our neighbors, she said simply. The console chimed again, a quiet request for attention. It displayed a confirmation message from the network, the kind neighborhood associations use when they want to be cordial and precise. The younger officer read it under his breath and did not repeat it aloud. Kelly pressed her palm flat against the panel, as if skin could mute a circuit. Louis finally raised his phone a little. Not high, not like someone trying to provoke, just enough to be unambiguous about what was happening and who was choosing it. His breath skimmed the microphone. He kept it steady. Ma'am, the younger officer said to Kelly, the log shows owner of record. It is pretty clear, Kelly shook her head. If it is clear, then she can present identification. Until then, it is not clear enough for me. She looked back at Denise. You are not going through this gate today. Way. The quiet around them thickened, not loud, not theatrical, just a density of attention. The kind that leaves a mark long after a morning has moved on. Denise glanced once more at the street beyond, at the path that led home. She thought of tea kettle and the framed photos and the quiet thresholds people build and protect over years. Then she looked back at the woman in front of her and understood that some mornings ask more than a nod and a smile. She stood a little straighter, not taller, simply more precisely herself. Then we will let the record show what it needs to show, she said. She did not raise her hands. She did not step back. She allowed the day to move around her and held her ground the way a shoreline holds a line in the sand and invites the water to learn it. A Tesla eased to the curb. Its window slid down a few inches. A driver glanced out, curious, then lifted a hand in a small wave toward the booth without interrupting. The cab bell chimed again. Feet shuffled on the sidewalk. Someone said the word neighbor with a question mark at the end. Louis breathed into his phone, voice barely above the street's hum. A simple sentence that sounded more like a truth finding its shape than a prediction dressed up as drama. This story will not stop here. 好色. The request for the system to speak had traveled farther than the gate. It had threaded through the block like a small current, catching on the cafe doorway where the bell chimed each time someone pushed through, on the park path where yoga mats rolled under arms, on the sidewalk where a stroller's wheels squeaked as it paused beneath the jacaranda. Morning had moved from quiet to gathered, and eyes found the booth not because someone told them to look, but because a certain kind of silence pulls attention the way the ocean pulls light. Denise stood just as she had stood before, not shifting the weight of her body, not raising her voice, a steady presence that made other people breathe more evenly without realizing why. Kelly occupied the console like a line drawn across a map. Straight, firm, unforgiving, one palm resting against metal as if heat from skin could anchor authority. The cafe across the street opened a small window to the sidewalk. A barista set 2 cups on the sill, called out names in the kind of voice that fills a space without strain, and reminded a woman with a sun hat that the tip jar sat to the right. A pair of teenagers drifted out with cold drinks that clinked softly. The delivery driver, Luis Ramirez, balanced a cardboard tray on the hood of his van and let his phone's camera watch the morning without rising to shoulder height. He did not narrate, not yet. He knew that sometimes the second sentence is the one that matters. What had been a simple exchange now bore different weight because witnesses had entered the scene. A woman in running shoes, Tasha Brown, slowed to a walk, then to a stop, brow creased as recognition landed. She set her hands on her hips to steady her breath, looked from Denise to the gate and back again, and setting a voice meant to carry without sounding like it was trying. I have seen her run this route for years. She belongs here. The words did not challenge. They affirmed. Kelly did not look at Tasha. She kept her gaze fixed on Denise. the way some people fix their gaze on a single rule and call it order. "Sir or ma'am, please step back from the console," she said toward the younger officer, as he leaned in to read the green band again. "We will not accept a single verification event as sufficient." The young man withdrew his hand the way a person withdraws a question when they sense the answer will come down like a door. The rhythm of the block had adjusted. A silver Tesla rolled to the curb, window lowering exactly the space needed for a voice to pass. The driver, a woman with careful hair and a posture that comes from many hours at a desk, studied Denise's profile and frowned the frown of memory, searching for a label. She almost pulled away, then didn't. "Excuse me," she called gently across the air. "Is your name Denise Walker?" Her tone carried the polite uncertainty of someone who reads the business section and does not always remember faces from photographs as easily as names from headlines. Denise turned her head enough for the light to catch her face. "Yes," she said, giving the word the shape of a neighborly greeting rather than an announcement. Sophia Martinez tapped the steering wheel with 2 fingers, relief and recognition arriving together. "I thought so." From Walker Tech. She did not say award or keynote or acquisition. She said the name of a company because, in many communities, that is how people mark belonging, by the work someone has built and the steadiness with which they have built it. The syllables slid into the morning like a pebble into a pond. Circles widened. Louis lifted his phone a notch. His breath warmed the microphone. He still did not add commentary. The younger officer darted a look at Kelly that asked a quiet question. "How far do we hold the line when the ground beneath it has changed?" Denise did not step into the answer Sophia's identification offered. She kept the same posture, the same voice, and said to no one and to everyone, "We can respect our procedures and still respect the people who live by them." She did not press, she did not retreat. She let the moment reveal itself. Tasha shifted an inch closer to the curb. "I have seen her at sunrise and late afternoon, rain and shine," she said. "She is not a stranger." 2 teenagers, trying to look like they were not listening while entirely listening, whispered to each other the way a radio whispers under a pillow. One said, "Is that the tech lady my uncle mentioned?" The other said, "Maybe." The barista at the cafe set another cup on the sill and, without prompting, dropped a dollar bill of his own in the tip jar, because kindness has a way of stitching mornings back together. Kelly's face remained composed, but began to gather a flush high on the cheekbones that had nothing to do with the sundae. She pressed her palm more firmly against the panel, as if pressure could harden a policy into a wall that no one could scale. "We are not opening this gate," she said, speaking with the clipped cadence of a person who has found safety in short sentences. "Not until identification is presented." Sophia tilted her head. "The system already verified her," she said, voice still reasonable. "You heard it. We all did." "We do not rely on a single step," Kelly returned, as if repetition could turn the response into a rule that had always existed. "Systems can be spoofed, and people can be misjudged," Denise said, the sentence so gentle it felt like a hand smoothing a tablecloth before visitors arrived. She did not add the rest. That misjudgment repeated and defended becomes something heavier than a mistake. She did not need to. The morning understood. A cyclist slowed to a stop and asked if anyone needed water. A mother in the minivan lifted her phone to FaceTime, a daughter who had been researching innovators for a school project. The girl on the screen mouthed the word pioneer and then covered her mouth as if she had said something too loud. The young officer leaned toward the console again. "Owner of record," he murmured, reading the log line a second time as if words look different when they must stand up in a crowd. He swallowed. "It is there, 212. "You will follow my lead," Kelly said, without turning. "We are not opening." The radio at her shoulder crackled and fell quiet, a stutter of static that sounded like hesitation learning to speak. Sophia slid her gaze toward Denise. "Do you want me to call someone?" she asked. Not the question of a rescuer, but the question of a neighbor offering a tool for a task. "Thank you," Denise said. "No." She breathed in the salt and the steam and the mixture of voices becoming a single listening, then let the breath go. Patience is often mistaken for passivity until the day it becomes the backbone of a change. Louis finally spoke, not to stir, only to record the truths of the frame his camera had captured. They are trying to block a homeowner, he said, quiet and matter of fact. The panel said her name. We are standing here watching what words mean. Sophia's window hummed a little lower. She pointed, not with a jab, but with the soft insistence of someone who has found a file in a drawer. That is Denise Walker, she said again. So the name and the proof would arrive together this time. You signed the grant for the robotics lab at the community college. My cousin studied there. Her voice dipped. You visited the class. You asked every student to say their name twice so you would not forget. In a morning like this, small, human detail travels faster than headlines. It made the recognition feel less like a headline and more like a neighbor remembering a kindness. Something in the posture of the crowd softened. They were not asking for a spectacle. They were asking for proportion, a rule that could bend to include the person it was meant to serve. The younger officer's shoulders lowered by a fraction, the way shoulders lower when they realize the weight they have been carrying is not theirs to keep. Kelly's jaw tightened. The flush along her cheekbones deepened. She lifted the radio from her shoulder and held it not like a tool for communication, but like proof that a decision belonged to her. She had practiced this role. She knew how to speak with finality. She had not practiced what to do when a system and a community both told her she was wrong. Denise did not say another word. She let the space between her and the gate speak. The green band on the panel that had flashed. Yes, the neighbor who had said, I've seen her here for years. The driver who had said your name and placed it in a story that made sense. She kept her palms open at her sides, the way one keeps hands open when the only thing to hold is dignity. The radio crackled a second time, clearer now, as if it had found a channel. Kelly raised it to her mouth. Her voice, when it came, was sharp, each syllable clipped to a point, the kind of sound that tries to turn a morning back into a checklist. Kelly yelled into her radio, call the police to gate number 1 immediately. We have an impersonator. Sirens did not arrive on the wave. They were still distant possibilities, somewhere between a dispatch screen and a steering wheel. But the call itself had changed the air. The word impersonator sat in the morning like a thorn no one could ignore. Denise felt the barb of it and let her breath smooth over the sting. She had asked for process. She had honored it, and the process had been refused. Now the choice narrowed to dignity on its feet or dignity pushed to its knees. She chose the first without raising her chin. She said Melissa's name in a calm that belonged on late-night radio, the kind that keeps lonely drivers alert and unafraid. The console chirped as the household line engaged. A voice answered with the softness of someone trained to keep panic from catching. Good morning, confirming gate connection. 1 moment, please. The panel's screen brightened, and lines of text scrolled the way careful hands would lay documents on a table. Resident, present, and verified. Owner of record, Denise Walker. Access authorized. A second line joined it. Verification logged, time stamped, entry denied by on-site personnel. Kelly stiffened as if a string had been pulled taut along her spine. She held the radio near her mouth but did not press the button. The younger officer looked at the green band on the panel and then at Denise, startled by the way facts could be both obvious and rejected. On the sidewalk, the small crowd had grown by a few more silhouettes. A woman with a yoga mat tucked under one arm, a pair of teenagers with drinks sweating in their hands, a cyclist straddling a blue frame and asking in a hushed voice if anyone needed water. The barista across the street propped the cafe door open and set the tip jar where the line could see it, then glanced toward a gate with the unpracticed worry of someone who has learned a lot about people by handing them coffee. Denise did not move closer to the console. She did not demand, did not scold. She spoke as if summarizing a meeting for the record. Please activate an ownership audit, she said to Melissa, and mirror the compliance log to neighborhood management. If there's an external call pending, note that the system has already confirmed the homeowner and that access was refused without cause. Melissa's voice, patient and precise, replied that the audit was open, that the mirror was live, and that a discreet notice had been sent to the management office. The panel added a new line. Escalation, noted by household. Compliance mirror active. Kelly's face flushed high in the cheekbones. You will not run this through a back channel, she said, as if her refusal could reach across wires and pull plugs from walls. The word back carried a kind of fear in it. Back channels are where people think they lose control. There is no back channel, Denise answered. And though her voice was low, it carried. There is only the record. She paused long enough to let the truth anchor. We all serve it, whether we like it or not. Louis lifted his phone to a steadier height. The lens gathered the iron lace of the gate, the soft green of the morning, the set of two women facing choices they could no longer avoid. He did not provide a running commentary. He let the frame speak. He understood that some stories become clear when they are watched without interruption. The radio on Kelly's shoulder crackled. Static found the path and then lost it. She depressed the button a fraction and released it again. Officers are on their way, she announced to no one in particular, as if incoming uniforms could turn denial into wisdom. Until arrival, we maintain protocol. What protocol? Tasha asked, voice gentle, hands still on her hips. The one that says, ignore your own system? The one that says, pretend you do not know your neighbors? We confirm identification, Kelly said. Physical, not electronic. Sophia's window slid another inch downward. You were given identification, she said, patient as a teacher with a room full of young minds. The system spoke. The household spoke. Even we spoke. She smiled without showing teeth. Sometimes that is not the moment for another barrier. Sometimes that is the moment for a nod. 猴子. Denise let the words settle and did not add to them. Then she looked at the panel in the way one looks at a door that has always opened when a key is placed where it belongs. Melissa, she said, please open the maintenance channel to the management company's security contractor. I would like their supervisor on the line. There was a brief pause, the faint clicks of a call daisy chaining through offices where morning meetings had not yet begun, and then another voice entered the air with professional cool. This is the duty supervisor. Good morning. Denise's tone did not change. Your personnel at Gate 1 have refused an authorized resident access after verification by camera and directory, she said. I would like the system to take over operation of the gate, and I would like the compliance log mirrored to your review queue. The supervisor cleared his throat with a sound that meant his morning had taken a turn he had hoped to avoid. Understood. We see the mirror. We see the denial. Another pause. The kind one hears when screens are read and decisions are measured against contracts. We are transferring gate control to Central for the moment. Local discretion is suspended. 真是我的兵. Kelly started a flicker passing through her eyes like weather across glass. She pressed the console with her palm. You cannot pull my control, she said. This is my post. Ma'am, the supervisor said, not unkindly. We are assuming control for compliance reasons. The gate did not swing wide yet. It was not a gesture of triumph. It was a change in stewardship. The panel chimed. The green band brightened and held. The younger officer took a half step back, conscious that the ground beneath the morning had shifted in a way he did not fully understand. Melissa spoke again, still calm. Ownership confirmation is now mirrored to management and contractor. Do you wish to notify the neighborhood association's board chair? Denise's answer was even. Yes, please, notify. Use a simple lock, no commentary. The cyclist adjusted a helmet strap. The teenagers' drinks clinked in their hands. The barista at the cafe lifted the tip jar and dropped in $1 of his own without knowing why the small sound of coins felt like encouragement. A mother in the minivan, FaceTiming her daughter, whispered, That is the woman I told you about. The one who asked every student to say their name twice. Kelly tightened her jaw. She lifted the radio and pressed the button completely this time. Hold police response en route, she said. But the sentence was not a sentence anyone on the other end could obey. The call had been placed. Wheels somewhere were turning. What could be changed was the record those wheels would arrive to find. Please note, Denise said to Melissa that on-site personnel threatened arrest after verification. Please attach relevant audio to the log. Acknowledged, Melissa said. Attached. 拉屎. The supervisor returned, voice steadier now that Plant had returned order to his morning. Central has gate control. We show owner verification. We note local refusal. We will proceed. The gate made a soft sound, a sound like a breath let out. It did not swing fully open. It shifted as machines shift when they are acknowledging a different hand at the wheel. The green held steady. In the booth, The younger officer's tablet flashed a dialogue box he had never seen. It informed him politely, with the unflappable tone of a machine that has no temper, that local controls were read-only pending review. Sophia watched with a quiet relief that did not need applause. Tasha nodded once, as if a muscle in the block had released. Louis let his camera rise until it caught Kelly's face in profile, and the way a person looks when they realize that authority without listening is not a strength. It is a drift. "Ma'am," the younger officer said to Kelly, softer than before, "Central has control." The words carried a kindness inside them, an invitation to step away from a losing argument and back into a shared standard. Kelly stared at the panel as if staring could reverse a wire. "I am responsible here," she said. "I decide." Denise did not answer that sentence. She did not need to. She turned slightly toward the street beyond the gate, the sweep of paved drive, the hedges trimmed the day before, the cool shade waiting near a front door, and then back to the guard. "No one is taking your dignity," she said. "Only the burden of a choice you do not have to carry alone." Melissa's voice returned, almost like a thought made audible. "Board chair has acknowledged the mirror," she said. "He's observing. He requests that on-site personnel follow central control." "All the wise says." The panel chimed once. The green post. The machine voice that rarely speaks outside of tests and storm drills came through a small grill above the console. "Gate override active. Owner of record verified. Local control suspended for review." The sentence had no triumph in it. It had grammar and order and the plainness of a road sign that people obey because roads are safer when they do. Kelly's mouth pressed into a line so thin it almost disappeared. She reached for the radio again, thumb seeking the talk button as if it were a lifeline. Her badge, clipped neat to her chest, flashed once. Then the screen on the console dimmed to a maintenance gray, awaiting instructions from Central. The young officer let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. Denise did not move forward yet. She did not need to be first through. She let the moment complete itself. She allowed the record to become the teacher everyone in earshot might remember. She stood still, present, patient. The way a foundation stands while storms measure themselves against it and lose. In the cab doorway, the barista lifted a paper cup and called a name. Then added, out of force of habit and hope, "Tip jar is to the right if you feel like it." On the curb, Sophia lowered her window all the way, then raised it again. A small private ritual for luck. Tasha released her hands from her hips and rolled her shoulders once. A hush like the inside of a seashell settled over the gate. It was not silence. It was attention choosing to learn. The radio in Kelly's hand went silent. The gate held its quiet green, like a steady heartbeat, while the console shifted to a maintenance gray that no hand on site could wake. In that small pause, the neighborhood learned a lesson about what records mean when people listen. The minutes after control moved to Central unfolded with the unhurried clarity of late morning along the coast. The sea breathed. The calf bell chimed. A gull cut one clean arc above the street. Denise remained in place, composed the way calm can be a kind of leadership, and let the systems do what they were built to do. A notice slid across a booth tablet, polite and precise, suspending local discretion and requesting cooperation. The younger officer read it twice, then looked to Kelly with a tentative kindness as if to offer her a way back to proportion. Kelly stood stiff, jaw tight, one hand on the radio that did not answer, the other hovering over a console that no longer took her touch. When the badge at her lapel flickered from soft white to a square of red, it did not gloat. It simply told the truth that authority borrowed can be called home. Melissa's voice reached the panel with the steady cadence of a steward closing a file without raising dust, confirming that audit and mirror remained active and that neighborhood management had acknowledged receipt. Across the street, the barista slid a cup onto the sill and nodded toward the tip jar with a quiet smile that seemed to say, "Let us keep our small courtesies even when mornings grow heavy." Sophia lifted her window halfway and, with the understated warmth of a neighbor who has practiced being useful, asked if Denise needed a call placed or a message relayed. Denise thanked her and declined because some refusals work best when they are answered by patience rather than by noise. Tasha shifted from one foot to the other and offered the officer a bottle of water. He accepted, grateful, in the shy way of a person new to the weight of public attention. Luis raised his phone just enough to fix the frame without invading the space, narrating in a modest voice that sounded like a ledger being read aloud. The system verified the homeowner. The contractor assumed control. The local denial has been logged. Inside the booth, a final dialogue appeared, credentials for on-site manager revoked. Pending review, and the young officer exhaled through his nose, a small sound of relief that slipped into the hum of traffic. Kelly tried the radio once more. Static answered, and then fell still. She looked at the panel as if a hard stare could convince it to change its mind, then lowered her hand. Without the prop of decision, her posture lost a fraction of its height. Denise did not advance with triumph. She placed one palm lightly against the ironwork as if greeting an old threshold, and then stepped through when the gate eased a quiet hand's width to make room. The morning did not cheer. It breathed, and with that breath, a handful of neighbors understood that dignity does not shout. Sophia murmured to the child on her screen that this is what it looks like when a rule learns who it is for. Tasha, who has seen many sunrises on this block, nodded once as if a seam had been stitched back into the day. The cyclist swung a leg over the blue frame and waited with an easy patience for the way to clear. Luis's camera found Denise in a neutral light. Sweat dark collar from an honest run, shoulders set, eyes level, the quiet carriage of someone who has spent years wearing calm like a well-made coat. At the edge of the driveway, she paused, not to search for words but to let the sidewalk catch up to the moment. Behind her, the younger officer stepped forward and, without drama, asked Kelly to move away from the console per central instruction. It was not a victory. It was a return to order. Kelly hesitated, then obeyed, the red badge winking once as if to confirm that she was no longer carrying a burden she had not been meant to carry alone. The neighborhood's small sounds came back into focus. The clink of ice against plastic, the swish of a stroller tire, the calf bell. Denise took in the faces curious and kind, guarded and learning, and recognized the weight of their watching. Sometimes, a community needs a scene to reread its own values. She did not scold, did not catalog the harms, did not turn the air into a courtroom. She carried her mourning forward with a poise that left space for other people to choose better next time. A minivan idled. A mother, still on the video call, whispered to her daughter the name that would land in a school report. The girl smiled, and that small smile became part of the record too. Melissa, never pushing, asked if Denise wished to close the audit. Denise answered not yet, because truth is not a door you slam. It is a window you leave open long enough for light to do its work. The house stood just ahead, glass catching the blue of the day, stairs wide and familiar. Denise set her shoes quietly on the stone, allowed the gate to settle behind her, and let the quiet settle too. She turned toward the gathered faces and drew a breath to speak. The quiet that followed was not emptiness. It was a kind of listening that made the morning wider. Denise stood near the foot of the steps, with the house at her back and the block in front of her. And when she spoke, her voice carried the way a trusted radio carries on a calm night, steady and close, the sort of sound people lean toward without noticing they have leaned. She thanked everyone for the patience they had shown one another, thanked the young officer for reading what the panel showed him, thanked the neighbors for keeping their voices low when tempers might have risen. She did not summon blame. She named what had happened and let the naming do the work. She said that rules made to serve people must remember their purpose, and that purpose was never humiliation. She said that the system had verified her, but what would endure was not a log line. It was the memory of how a community behaved when a single morning asked it to choose between pride and proportion. The block seemed to exhale. A stroller wheel squeaked and then rolled. A goal stitched one slow curve against the sky. The calf bell chimed as someone held the door so a pair of teenagers could pass with their cold drinks. Sophia lowered her window the rest of the way as if to let gratitude breathe between car and curb. Tasha stood easy now, palms open at her sides, a runner's shoulders settling into their natural place. Luis steadied his recording but brought it a little closer, not to intrude but to make sure the sentence that mattered would not be lost to wind. The young officer nodded to Denise, a small motion that seemed to close a circuit between training and conscience. Inside the booth, the tablet's gray maintenance screen waited for central instruction without impatience. as machines do when they have learned their lane. Denise did not ask the crowd to clap, did not ask anyone to change their minds in public. She simply explained like a teacher after the bell that she had asked Melissa to keep the audit open for a time so that the record would hold the whole morning, not only the ports and pings of a camera and a directory, but also the refusal and the mirror to management and the transfer of control. She said that later, when the neighborhood association sat down to review, she would be there with the same voice and the same patience and the same insistence that a rule is strongest when it bends to include the person it was made to protect. She did not mention her work or her company. She named the block, the beach, the cafe on the corner. She named the places where people say hello because that is how belonging sounds when it is quiet. The mother in the minivan tilted her phone so a girl on the screen could see better. The girl whispered a thank you that did not quite travel across the street but seemed to travel into the day. The barista set a cup on the sill and tapped the tip jar with 2 fingers, not to ask but to bless the small economy of care that keeps the neighborhood stitched together. A cyclist offered the young officer another bottle of water. He declined with a grateful shake of the head and tucked the first into his vest, as if to keep a kindness close. Denise said, in that tempered voice built for long roads and late hours, that she had been mistaken many times in her life and that the most important thing she learned was not to become the mistake someone else made. She said that strong systems do not fear review and that strong people do not fear apology. She did not look toward the booth when she said it. She faced the neighbors, the ones who would tell this story to others at dinner tables and along the path to the shore and in the line for coffee when the bell chimed. She said that a gate is a tool and a metaphor, and both are safer when we remember who owns the land. The house behind her caught a pane of sun and threw it back as a soft square on the stone. She turned half a step toward it, then back again, because the morning still had an inch of teaching left in it. She thanked Sophia for the memory of the classroom visit and for the quiet way she named work without turning it into a banner. She thanked Tasha for a steady witness. She thanked Louise for recording without trying to lead the moment by its nose. She thanked the teenagers for being there, because some lessons matter most when they arrive early and without fanfare. She thanked the young officer for finding his footing and asked him, with real gentleness, to keep trusting what the screen shows when it is joined by what conscience shows. He said yes. The word came out soft but sure, like a promise whispered for practice and meant for use. Kelly stood a few steps behind the booth's threshold, hands slack at her sides, the radio silent at her shoulder, the badge on her lapel lit with its square of red that had no anger in it, only accuracy. Her face had lost the flush and found the pallor that did not ask for pity, only for air. Denise did not address her by name across the whole street. She walked closer, not so near as to crowd, near enough for the conversation to belong to them without performance. She said that the board chair had acknowledged the mirror and that there would be review and that she would show up to it with the same voice she used this morning. She said that what broke here was not a panel or a radio or a rule. It was the habit that makes some people protect their authority instead of the truth their authority was borrowed to serve. She did not ask for an apology and did not refuse one. She held the space where an apology might choose to arrive. Kelly lifted her gaze. There was the beginning of something in it, not yet a word, perhaps only the shape that words make before they come. She swallowed and nodded once. The nod of a person whose day has shifted a degree and who would need hours or days to feel the full tilt. Denise accepted the nod with a smaller nod of her own and stepped back, releasing Kelly to a path that would be hers to walk without escort. The gate stood easy on its hinges now, ready to open or hold as Central's instruction, an obedient thing relieved to be placed again in steady hands. Denise turned to the block one last time. The morning had given her an audience. She gave the audience a sentence it could carry without strain and pass without mutilation. She said that the lesson was not about a technology, though the technology had helped, and not about a title, though an owner of record mattered. The lesson was about who we allow to define who belongs. She drew a breath that felt like a page turning. Then she said, clear and even, the sentence that would travel. Dignity does not ask permission. It is a birthright of every human being. There was no applause. There was a stillness that felt like assent. The bell at the cuff chimed again, and someone on the sidewalk said, "Thank you," the way people say it when they do not know where else to place gratitude. The teenagers drifted toward the park. Tasha started her jog again, slow and loose. Sophia lifted her window and tapped the steering wheel twice, a private benediction. Louis lowered his camera and looked at the screen for a second, not to edit but to make sure the sentence had landed whole. Denise climbed the steps at an ordinary pace. On the threshold, she paused for a small moment that would not show in any log. A palm against cool wood, a breath in, a breath out, the sense of room waiting without judgment. Inside, the foyer held the quiet that good houses keep for the people who have earned them. She did not reach for a towel or water right away. She stood where family photos lined the walls and let the day file itself gently into a place it would be easy to reach later, but would not crowd the present. The kitchen clock ticked with an honesty that does not demand attention. A kettle waited on the stove, a single chair near the window offered a seat shaped by many mornings. She crossed to the window and pulled the curtain an inch, enough to see the block faintly through its gauze. The small crowd had already thinned by half. The barista placed the tip jar farther from the sill so the door could swing without knocking it. The young officer took one careful step into the booth and read the maintenance notice again, this time without fear. Kelly stood with her back to the panel for a count of heartbeats and then walked into the shade to breathe. The minivan pulled away. The girl on the screen waved before the image winked out. The street was keeping its promises, to absorb and release, to witness and then to move. Denise let the curtain fall back. She lifted the kettle, filled it at the sink, set it on the burner, and turned the knob. The flame caught with a sound as small as a match. She leaned both palms on the counter and looked at the photographs tacked to the side of the refrigerator. A ribbon cutting, a family graduation, a snapshot of the block at dusk when porch lights blink in like fireflies. She did not rehearse what she would say at the board review later. She did not replay what had been said at the gate. She allowed the breath of the house to breathe for her. When the kettle began to murmur on its way to a whistle, she reached for a mug, the heavy kind that holds heat and does not mind being held, and placed it beside the stove. Outside, the sea kept its beautiful habit of arriving and retreating without argument. The city kept its habit of asking people to learn how to live together in the narrow places. At the edge of the property, the gate held its habit of obeying the right hand. And on this side of the threshold, a woman who had been asked to explain herself simply by showing up as she was, chose again the posture that had carried her through more rooms than any badge would ever open. Stillness without surrender, clarity without sharpness, patience without permission. She lifted the kettle when it began to sing, and poured. The steam rose in a thin ribbon and then disappeared into the air. In the stillness after the gate closed, what lingered was not the clash of authority, but the quiet dignity of a woman who refused to let prejudice write her story. Neighbors returned to their errands, yet many carried with them the image of calm strength holding firm against misplaced power. From that morning emerged a lesson older than any system or badge. Respect grows strongest when it is given freely, and justice is at its most enduring when joined with compassion. Like a porch light burning steadily through the night, one person's patience and truth can guide a whole community toward a clearer path. So tonight, as you sit with your own memories of challenge and grace, let this story remind you to notice the unseen acts of courage around you. And if it has touched your heart, consider passing a word, a kindness, or a steady light to someone who still waits outside a closed gate.